Hi, welcome to the tutorial on RM SCADA, which is an add-on module to Ignition developed by Pramanj Technologies. So the step-by-step instructions for downloading and installing the RM SCADA package are given on the GitHub README file. So first step is to download the rmsmaster.zip from this location onto some folder and unzip the files into C:/RMS. This is the default folder where all the RMS files are expected to be present. So the RM SCADA master file folder looks something like this. So we have to unzip in some folder. We have unzipped into D:/. So we have to copy all these files into C:/RMS. So all the files are present here. Now the next step is to have a look at the files. Now this contains just this subfolder contains the project files, which are the backups for the ignition project, sample project, which contain the tags which are defined to run the RM SCADA sample project. So there are a couple of projects. This is 1915 is for ignition 7.9.10 and this is for 8.0. And this is a tag XML file. This is not really required because all the XML tags are already defined here. But in case you have to create tags for some reason, you can import these tags .xml into Ignition. Okay. So next step is to look at all the files which are present. So I have opened in the notepad. So this there is a file called config.js. So this contains the pub sub keys of pubnub. So these are just written as demos. So you have to obtain the keys from pubnub, create an account for yourself, and copy paste, replace these strings with your Ignition pub sub keys. So text.txt. This is a JSON file which defines a database for the RMS. Now this is a subset of all the ignition tags that you're going to use. Some of these tags are going to be used in driving the ignition dashboards, the RMS dashboards. So the structure of this file is, this is a JSON array. So each tag that you want to define in this database for RMS you have to first give the fully qualified tag path, give its type. It's a float or it's an integer or it's a boolean. So these are the three different types of tags you could have, and the definition of that tag, and units, the engineering units, and this is the width. Width is for displaying the value, what should be the number of digits for a float, and what are the decimal places after number of digits after the decimal point. And this is a subarray which gives the conditions, that is for this tag value can be in different states depending on its value. So for example, the first condition is by default the tag is in 0 state. So there is no condition for that and there is no limit for that. And the label, that is the state of that tag, will be labeled as normal. The second condition is, this is the 0th condition, 0th state, normal state. So for all the tags it will have no conditions and no limits, and what should be the state of that tag. And the first state is this is the condition, the tag value greater than, and limit is what the threshold, greater than 75. Its state will be called high. So second state is if the condition that the tag value is greater than 80, it will be labeled as very high. So you can define up to 10 such conditions, 10 such states for every tag. So this is for the float, and if it is an integer, your conditions will be equal to. If the value is equal to 1, it will be called manual or whatever. If the condition is, if the state that value is equal to 2, numerical value is equal to 2, it will be called auto and things like that. And if it's a boolean tag, for example here, then the conditions you have to define again as equal to. First condition, 0th state has got no condition, and normal state is open, let's say, for example. And the first state is when the tag equals value is true, and it will be labeled as closed. So you can define equal to true or equal to false in case of a binary boolean. So you have to define this tag, you will create this tags database. This is something similar to the augmented reality AR SCADA module tags.txt file. The only thing is that you have some extra parameters there which define where that tag is defined in the augmented reality screens, but that doesn't make sense here. Okay, so this has to be manually given right now, but in future we will try to generate this through using some scripts from Ignition database. We'll extract the properties from by browsing the Ignition database and generating this automatically. You have to just specify the tag, fully qualified tag path. But right now you have to manually give this. So this is a sort of a database for the RMS module. Now the second file in this folder, RMS folder, we just saw this file tags.txt. Second important file is Eon file. This is also very important. This is again an array of all the dashboards that you define, Eon project of PubNub. So you have to first give name of the channel. Let's say this is bar channel. It can be any name, but we have just followed a convention that so that we can identify what is this channel for. So basically you have to define channels for each of the dashboards. Say if it's a trend or a bar chart or a gauge or a pie chart, you have to define name of that channel. And then what are the tags which define the group of tags that drive this dashboard. So this is for a bar chart, and these are the 0 to 5 tags from Ignition database, or rather RMS database. It should be defined in the tag.txt file. So this will be displayed as bar charts. Now you can have any number of bar charts by just copying this, but this name has to be unique. Maybe you can call it bar 2 or bar 3, something like that. And this 5 is the update cycle. This is just a convention for our understanding. You can give any unique name here. So this is the second dashboard, which is a gauge or a dial. Only one variable is required to be defined here. So we have defined about 4 gauges and 1 bar graph, and this is a pie chart. So again, these 4 tags define the pie chart, and this is the trend chart. So again, these 4 parameters of Ignition, they define the trend. So this is an important, you have to configure what are the tags from your database to be, you want to monitor on the RM SCADA screens. So we'll see how these are to be used in a HTML file. Now the next file here is stage.html and stage.js. So this is a HTML file. Here you have to just change these properties. So this is a name of the database, so that by default it's tags db, and you have to define, you can define the file which contains the database tags.txt. So this is the default, but you can have any other name. So if you change the name, you have to change the name of the file, tags file here. Max page is a parameter which defines how many rows in this table should be there per page. And this is the color of every state. Each tag can have 0 to 9 states. So you can define what are the different colors. This is the color for the tag state 0, which is white color. This is the background color of that row. So background color is red if its state is 1, and orange for state 2, things like that. And this is the font color. You can define your own fonts also, but we have just maintained a black font color. Okay, so this is for you to define, configure some of the properties of the tabular display. And then this is the HTML page where all the dashboard are defined. So basically you have to copy here as it is, and these are the CSS styles defined. So 4 panels have been defined with the background color and its height, width. These are 4 windows, and these 4 windows panels will be used to display the dashboards. So each one is given a name, panel or a small panel or a large panel. And this is the page where you define your divisions. So first division is trend, let's say, and which uses the large panel style, which is defined here, that is 600 by 800 pixels. Second division is for bar graph. You can give some unique name. You can have as many trends or bars as you wish, and which class, CSS class it's going to use. And this is for the gauge. There are 4 gauges for the 4 channels, and then there's a pie chart, and it includes the config file, which is basically the pub/sub keys. So this file is common for everything. This file is read by the states.html as well as the dashboards HTML, as well as the ignition scripts for the pubnub. So you have only one place to give your keys. And then here you have to define the variables for the channel names that you have configured. So we have got one channel for the gauges and now this is pubnub instance is created over here using the pub/sub keys, which are read from the config file. And this is where the dashboards are configured. This is the channel component, and you have to mention which channels is driving this chart component. and this is the rate 5000 milliseconds. That's every 5 seconds it will refresh, and leave the things as it is, default values. So the second component is gauge, and of course this is important. Bind to which division? We have defined the divisions here. Bind to which is this is the binding of the component where it should go in the HTML page. So the gauge channel is configured to this division, and there are 4 instances of this, and there is a pie chart, and finally there is a trend chart. So you can change some of the properties from the documentation of on PubNub. You can see there are some properties you can change. For example, spline means that in the trend all the points will be connected with a smooth curve. It could be a straight line, then it will just join the point with the straight line. So things like that. So what should be the label of that axis, x-axis and y-axis? So this is how all the dashboard has to be configured. And yeah, there is just one more HTML page which just defined a main page for opening either the dashboard page or the tabular display of the tags. So okay, so these are the different files. Now the next step is, yeah, now we have to copy this file which is kept in the yeah, this file. This is the pubnub jar file that has to be copied onto Ignition's gateway. So you have to copy that file and paste it in this folder. Ignition library, core library for the gateway. You have to just copy paste on this location, because our Jython libraries, they use some of these APIs. So this is very important to copy it here. So next step is you have to create an account in PubNub, and you have to open the PubNub page. With this screen for creating an account. So give your mail ID, and it'll give you 2 keys for PubSub keys. So you have to copy that and paste it in the config file. So the next step is open the config.js that we have seen, which is basically this file, and paste the PubSub keys. Now under C:project files, the backups for the Ignition projects are kept, as I earlier told. So this is 1913 is the version 8 file, and this is for the version 7.9.10 of Ignition. It is partial because I didn't store the client tags, because otherwise it gives you warning that already exists. So you have to copy this, create this projects, and then start the Ignition server, which we have already done, which is here. Now it's running for the past some time. So actually it's not really required to keep the Ignition running, because the this RMS dashboard runs as just as scripts, and from the gateway it just sends the data, uh, the values. It doesn't really need Ignition to be running. Only thing is, if you have a project which updates the database, then of course you have to have the Ignition. But for the sample project, it's not really necessary to have Ignition running, because the static values itself it will send, and we can change some of these values to see the dashboards change. So we already started the Ignition, and now you just make sure that your okay, we haven't started yet. Okay, now we have to start the scripts. So open the designer, and there are two flags here. So we have to start the pubnub. Now these are the scripts which contain the code for driving the pubnub dashboards. So in order to start the scripts, first the two keys are defined here, two flags are defined. So you can actually link it to a button using the scripts on some client screen, so which will write onto this tag. But here we'll just write directly from the designer. So once you start the pubnub, you can just see the wrapper file. It should start, yeah, starting pubnub. So there shouldn't be any errors. And then you have to start a timer. So once you start a timer, the 5-second timer will start, and continuously every 5 seconds it will write the dashboards that we have defined in the this file, Eon file. These are the dashboards that we defined. It will write the packets as JSON packets and then send it to the pubnub clients. So let's start the timer. So once again, we'll just look at the wrapper file. Yeah, so it says pubnub connected, and it has sent some receive a message, and then the timer is on. Normally there's no. Now the packets are being sent. Now we have to open the dashboard using right click the HTML files. So for that we have to open the RMS folder. So I'll open the I have got a backup because the pubnub keys are not defined in the RMS that I showed you. So I got a backup of that with RMS1. So we have to open it on a browser. Now the dashboard starts. And you have to open the states.html file.